It was on a morning when the New York sky seemed suspended by a thread of silver light that Helena Albuquerque, 81 years old, heiress to a real estate empire and unspeakable rumors, arrived at Ibirapuera Park without imagining that the absurd promise of an unknown girl hung over her fate like a sentence, waiting for the exact moment to fall. The driver, Evandro, gloved and cautious, removed the crimson suede-lined wheelchair and positioned it on the still damp sidewalk. Helena dragged her gaze along the running track, where strangers sweated for their own health, and felt that pang of envy she preferred to call skepticism. She had spent 2 years collecting improbable diagnoses and promising treatments, but no doctor had dared to guarantee more than some spasmodic improvement. She had learned to hide her disbelief beneath silk shawls. She smiled at gala events, made lavish donations to hospitals, but returned to her apartment on Avenida Paulista, carrying the muffled silence that settles over those who see no horizons beyond polished marble and empty rooms. The squeak of the tires on the sidewalk made Helena grip the arms of the upholstered chair. Evandro stepped away a few paces to answer a call, leaving her under the canopy of an off-season blooming purple ipay tree. It was then that Helena heard, as if it came from the core of that trunk, a crystalline, childish laugh, followed by a whisper almost impossible to believe. "I can make you walk again." The phrase, spoken in simple Portuguese, carried a naive faith that defied the 7 layers of incredulity the millionaire had built around her own pain. When Helena raised her chin, she saw a little girl with light brown eyes clutching a school notebook to her chest. The girl repeated the promise with an effortless sweetness, as if she were offering mint candies to a weary stranger. "Excuse me," murmured Helena, her voice hoarse from someone who doesn't converse with strangers without an appointment. "What did you say?" The girl shrugged as if explaining were unnecessary and took a step forward, hugging the notebook like a paper shield. "My name is Leah. My grandmother brought me here to feed the ducks. But she—" Leah pointed to an empty bench and made a gesture, as if searching for someone who had vanished. A flash of concern crossed her features, but soon the smile returned. "I just wanted to say that I can." Helena stared at the girl, trying to identify some marketing campaign in that absurdity, but Leah wore no NGO t-shirt or church hat. There was only raw, unpolished faith, the kind the wealthy woman had so often learned to despise. Before she could respond, Evandro hung up the phone and approached, his expression alarmed at seeing the child so close. "Miss, please step back," he said, interposing his body between Leah and his boss. "It's all right, Evandro," said Helena, surprised by her own gentleness. She turned to Leah. "And how would you do that, dear? Are you a doctor? A little prodigy physiotherapist?" Leah laughed, and the sound was like water flowing over smooth stones. I draw people healed. I draw what God shows me. When I'm done, the person gets better. Sometimes it takes a while, but it always happens." Helena wanted to end the conversation with a condescending smile, but the last sentence hooked a hidden tremor in her chest. She regretted feeling hope. Still, she asked in a dry tone, "And who taught you that?" "My grandmother," replied Leah, placing the notebook on the edge of the wheelchair. "She said drawing is praying with colors." A breeze stirred the pages, and Helena saw sketches of bodies enveloped in glowing hearts, bones aligned like columns of light, legs encircled by golden ribbons. Evandro frowned, about to take the notebook, but Helena raised her hand in refusal. "Where is your grandmother now?" she asked, surprised by her genuine interest. Leah pointed again to the empty bench, her lips trembling for a moment of vulnerability. She was there, but she disappeared. "I think she went to get medicine. Sometimes she forgets." The word Alzheimer hung silently between them, though neither spoke it. Helena felt a spasm of empathy so sincere that she looked away. Evandro, attentive, offered, "Would you like me to look for the guardian? I can call security." Before Helena could respond, Leah opened the notebook to a blank page and, with a broken blue pencil, began tracing determined lines. She drew a seated woman, legs immobile, eyes closed as if asleep. Then she added yellow circles around the legs, resembling gentle flames. Helena watched each stroke as if witnessing her own story take shape, and when the girl finished, she wrote above, "Before dawn, she will rise." A shiver ran down the old woman's spine, though she could not feel her legs. Evandro cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Madam, perhaps we should go. The humidity is rising." Helena wanted to order their departure, but asked the girl if anyone had ever not believed her. Leah nodded and pointed the pencil at the millionaire's chest. Incredulity doesn't change what's true. It just makes the path more painful. I learned that when my dad left. I drew him coming back. He hasn't yet, but I know he will. The child's tenderness and courage cracked Helena's armor. Before she could react, a metallic noise echoed, the clang of a service gate slamming in the wind, and Leah startled. "My grandmother!" she exclaimed, running in the opposite direction of the lake. Evandro took a step back, but Helena, in an impulse, grabbed the sleeve of his coat. Let her go. Turning to the notebook on her lap, she felt a lump in her throat. The drawing seemed to pulse, as if the yellow flames were breathing. Helena closed her eyelids very slowly. That night, Helena couldn't sleep. Though she had learned to shield herself against unnecessary emotions, those that threatened to topple an emotional structure built on clinical lucidity, silent losses, and vast wealth, something about that girl had invaded her fortress with disarming gentleness. The notebook lay on the armchair beside her bed, still open to the drawing's page. Helena had tried to close it twice, but always returned to study the lines with an obsession she didn't understand. The drawn figure had vague features, but the shawl on the shoulders, the ring on the left ring finger, and the haircut were all hers. It wasn't symbolic. It was a mirror. And the inscription above, "Before dawn, she will rise," echoed in her mind like a liturgical refrain. At 3:47 a.m., she awoke from a shallow sleep with the strange sensation that someone was watching her. But the room was empty, except for the bluish light streaming through the high windows of the apartment. She felt her arms, her torso, her fingers, as always. But in that moment, as if trying to guess the presence of a forgotten perfume, she subtly moved her left foot, and it trembled, almost imperceptible, like a leaf yielding to the wind. Helena held her breath and tried again. The movement was clearer, an involuntary muscle contraction, as if something in her nervous system had awakened from a coma. The muffled scream that escaped her lips woke Evandro, who was sleeping in the service room. In seconds, he was by her bedside, not understanding why his boss stared at him as if seeing a ghost. "Madam Helena, has something happened?" She murmured, swallowing the emotion. "I felt it. My legs. They moved." Evandro, skeptical by profession, frowned. "Are you sure, madam?" "I'm not prone to illusions," she replied almost sharply, but this time it was real. She pointed to the notebook, still on the armchair. "The girl, Leah. She drew this." Evandro followed the old woman's gaze and approached the drawing. He adjusted his glasses. "This here, don't you think it's just a child's imagination?" "No. I think it's the only thing that's given me hope in 2 years." Evandro took a deep breath, searching for words that wouldn't sound disrespectful. "Would you like us to look for this child, madam? Perhaps with the park administration's help?" Helena nodded, but her gaze went beyond the room. That night, she didn't sleep anymore. The next morning, Evandro began a discreet search. He reviewed park cameras, questioned street vendors, searched records, but there was no trace of Leah or the mysterious grandmother. No one remembered them. No names in the registries. No missing person reports. Meanwhile, Helena spent the following days focusing on exercises she once considered humiliating, trying to move her toes, pressing her thighs against the upholstery, visualizing steps. Each day, a small advance. Each night she kept the notebook by her bedside like a reliquary, and each morning she felt less seated and more on the verge of rising. On the 4th night, she dreamed of Leah. In the dream, the girl was sitting on the ground of the old kindergarten garden where Helena had studied. She drew with yellow chalk on the concrete, murmuring words Helena couldn't understand. Upon waking, a phrase echoed, "If you want to walk, you need to forgive." The phrase stung. Helena understood immediately who it referred to. Clara, her daughter. They hadn't spoken in 4 years. After a fierce argument over the management of the family foundation, Clara had distanced herself with an ultimatum. Either Helena admitted her mistakes, or she wouldn't see her grandchildren again. Helena, proud, chose silence. After all, she believed time would correct what self-esteem dared not touch. But now, faced with the possibility of rising, literally and emotionally, pride felt like an anchor, and the only way to release it was to reconnect with Clara. "Call her, Evandro," said Helena on a Saturday morning, watching him prepare tea. "Tell her I need to see her alone." "Here." The driver hesitated. "Do you think she'll agree, madam?" "It doesn't matter. I'm ready to hear a no and not die from it. But if she agrees, maybe I'm the one who needs to ask for forgiveness. Evandro swallowed hard, moved. He had known Helena for 20 years. He had seen her turn pain into donations, grief into legacy, but he had never seen her admit weakness with such clarity. He picked up the phone. On Monday, Clara entered the apartment at 10 a.m. sharp. She was thinner, her hair tied in a tight bun, her eyes full of questions. Helena was seated by the window, the notebook on her lap. Evandro withdrew without a word. "Mother," said Clara dryly. "Clara," replied Helena with a lump in her throat. "Thank you for coming." The silence between them lasted 7 seconds. An abyss made of years, accusations, mutual regrets. Helena began, but her voice faltered. She tried again. "I wanted you to know I'm sorry." Clara didn't respond. "I was wrong. I turned our foundation into a monument to my pride. I dismissed your vision, and I paid with your absence." "Mother, you don't know how much it hurt," said Clara finally. "Raising my children without the grandmother they loved, explaining why you didn't call on their birthdays, telling them it wasn't their fault." Helena cried silently. Then she extended the notebook. "This made me want to walk again, but I discovered it's no use lifting the body if the heart remains prostrate." Clara leafed through the drawings. When she reached the page with the golden circles around the seated woman's legs, something broke inside her. She sat on the floor as she did as a child and cried, leaning against her mother's leg. "Forgive," said Helena. "Forgive," replied Clara. That afternoon, after the reunion, Helena asked Evandro to take her to the foundation she hadn't set foot in for over 2 years. Still in her wheelchair, but with her face lit by something even the sun couldn't mimic, she crossed the corridors where she once dictated orders and cast haughty glances. Old employees looked at her with surprise, not for seeing her there, but for seeing her different. There was something lighter in her demeanor, something neither time nor pain nor money could manufacture: liberation. Clara accompanied her, respectful, keeping a distance that allowed her mother to take the lead. Upon entering the main room, where the plaques of donors and honorees hung, Helena asked everyone to leave. Then she looked at the central plaque where her name stood out in bronze. "I want you to replace this panel," she said. "Put the name of who really inspired what will happen here." Clara frowned. "Who?" Helena smiled. "Leah, the girl from the park." That same week, with her daughter's support, Helena created the Leah Project, a therapeutic wing dedicated to pediatric rehabilitation through art, faith, and emotional expression. Psychologists, physiotherapists, and occupational therapists were invited to explore new treatment methods based on creative belief, including art as prayer. The idea seemed, at first glance, eccentric, but no one dared doubt the conviction of the woman who, in recent days, had surprised doctors with signs of active neuroplasticity in her legs. There was movement, there was progress. And then, on a grey August morning, it happened. Helena was alone on her apartment's balcony, the notebook on her lap. The drawing of legs enveloped Ascale wrapped in light before her. She took a deep breath, and, as if the ground had been pulled closer, she rested her hands on the chair's arms and felt her feet press against the floor. With the slowness of one who respects a miracle, she stood, first 1 centimeter, then 2, and then she was standing. She didn't scream, she didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes and, with her hands clasped over her chest, whispered, "Thank you." That same day, upon arriving at the foundation, Helena was greeted with astonishment and tears by employees and patients. She walked, lightly supported by Evandro, to the newly inaugurated room. The bronze plaque now read, "LIA, the name of the faith that draws miracles." The children applauded. One of them, a little girl in a wheelchair, extended a drawing. It was of Helena standing, with a crown of flowers on her head and 2 birds on her shoulders. She smiled, but her expression froze upon seeing, in the background of the drawing, a familiar figure. "Who's this girl here?" she asked, pointing. The child answered, as if stating the obvious. "It's Leah. She drew with me, said you'd like it." Helena looked around, but there was no Leah, no grandmother, no traces, just the drawing. She took the notebook, compared the lines. They were the same. And then something finally made sense. Perhaps Leah wasn't an ordinary child. Perhaps she had been sent by the one she claimed to see with the eyes of her heart, an angel disguised as a girl, a messenger of reconciliation, or perhaps Perhaps she was just a child, but a child with enough faith to move what no medicine could. That night, Helena returned home in silence. Clara accompanied her, smiling tenderly. "You're different, Mom," she said in the elevator. "I'm no longer a woman waiting to be carried," she replied. "Now I walk with the knees of my soul." Upon arriving at the apartment, Evandro opened the door carefully. In the living room, there was a white envelope on the table with no sender. Helena opened it. Inside, a note in childish handwriting. "I'm glad you stood up. Now go help others do the same. I keep drawing wherever I'm needed." No signature, no clues, just certainty. In the following months, Helena became one of the main sponsors of art therapy centers in the country. She established scholarships for children with artistic talents from underprivileged communities. And above all, she began discreetly visiting hospitals, offering drawings made by herself, inspired by Leah's. One day, on a wall at the foundation, someone wrote in chalk, "Sometimes what makes us walk again isn't the legs, it's forgiveness." Helena asked that the phrase never be erased, and every time a child handed her a drawing saying, "God showed me this for you," she smiled with teary eyes, placed her hand on the paper, and murmured, "Then it's time to believe again." Because in the end, Leah was right. Incredulity only makes the path more painful, but it doesn't change the truth. And before dawn, she had risen.